Hey YouTube. So, in this process of the day, I was thinking of like something I could talk about, what a discussion topic that would be something that I'm quite knowledgeable on. I'm going to talk to you today about drugs. So, drugs can be helpful. They can provide spiritual insight. They can provide creative understanding and stuff like that. But for me, the main benefit of drugs wasn't just like peer pressure and being accepted, because that doesn't really jive with me because I'm an individualist. But that actually the main reason I did drugs was to form deep and meaningful connections with people. Because when you do drugs, the mask comes off. You're always wearing a mask and you're talking about the weather and small talk things like, oh, how are the Calgary Flames doing or whatever this season or whatever. And it's just surface level bullshit. And when you do drugs, you kind of relax a little and you have more meaningful discussions. A lot of it's just random bullshit, but you can see the true essence of a person a lot more under certain drugs than when you can sober. Like the mask comes off, the stage is gone. But this isn't a video glorifying drugs. This is a video finding the reasons why I do these things, and I'm just kind of monologuing to you. So recently I've managed to stay sober for several months, and things are going a lot better. I'm attaining new levels of stability. I'm doing things that I could never imagine doing, being high every single day. And I would get high all the time. I would crush up Valium on my speaker. I would stay up for days on Vyvanse and shit, and get all tweaked out and get my tweak on. And I'd smoke weed all day, every day, for as long as I could afford to, which was usually about 2 weeks out of the 2 weeks out of the month. And then 2 weeks I wouldn't have anything, and I'd be panicking, and things wouldn't be good. And I can see the damage that those drugs were doing. Like when you're using to socialize, that's one thing. When you're doing the drug just to avoid the pain of existence, that's another. And so recently, I'm trying to cut out the addictions, trying to stay off the drugs and things like that. I started doing Smart Recovery, and that's like a very important program. I stopped going because my main mentor guy kind of quit and stopped doing his like the facilitator changed, and I wasn't sure about the new facilitator and how long things would be to get up and running again. But yeah, I don't know. I've been doing drugs since I was 15, and the first time I smoked weed, I had like a seizure. But then after that, I was all good, and I felt good for like a couple days. And the thing was, as I got older, it just became like an addiction, right? But then the reason that I actually did those drugs was to form deep and meaningful spiritual connections with my friends. Now, contrast that to the drugs that are available today. Now, you see the fentanyl zombies, like I'm walking around, I see people hunched over and looking sick and not having a good time. They do not look like they're having a good time, and they're hooked on this shit. And it can be as simple as someone giving you a pill, you take that, you're hooked on fentanyl for the rest of your life. Like your brain will be permanently fucked up, and it'll be really hard for you to get well. But you see those people like on the fentanyl and on those harder drugs, and like I personally haven't done fentanyl, but I've definitely done OxyContin, things like that before. Back before it was cool, only on a handful of occasions though. But yeah, I was a big drug user, and I'm trying to figure out like how to experience that connection without falling into the traps of drugs. But I'm limited as to what I can say, so I can't form meaningful connections because I'm always looking over my shoulder, wondering, what the my masters will think, and the short leash they have me on. Like, I'm just the Illuminati puppet, bro. Like, it's not Illuminati magician; it's Illuminati puppet. And that's the thing, is I'm kind of like a gatekeeper. I keep the gates, I open the doors, I tell people certain things at certain times to open up new avenues that they can explore, but I'm never allowed to explore those avenues myself. And so I spend like every day just learning and absorbing knowledge and reading books and reading shows, and we're so saturated with information, it's hard to separate the wheat from the chaff. Chaff? Chaff? I don't know what the word is. But yeah, so I'm just thinking about that, and oh yeah, so on to the topic. I always get derailed and I start rambling because a lot of my favorite YouTubers like to ramble. So yeah, but yeah, I'm thinking that yeah, giving up drugs is was one of the most difficult things of my life. And I was an active drug user. I existed to get myself completely annihilated every single day. That wasn't working out for me. Like, I can see how that was affecting my mental health. Like, I was a sick puppy. Like, I was a weed fiend. There's some people, they can smoke weed and not get addicted, and it's just like, oh, whatever, I don't have a couple of days, I'll be fine, or a social smoker. But for me, it was my whole life. Smoking weed was like my ritual, my favorite habit. It was the most enjoyable thing in my life. And like, recently I've made my whole life about not doing drugs, and then but making your whole life about not doing something that you enjoy doing isn't like gonna fill that void. You know what I mean? You're still gonna want that thing. If your whole life becomes about avoiding cigarettes, then eventually you're gonna start smoking cigarettes, right? So it's about finding those meaningful activities, but we're so saturated with dopamine hits and content and all kinds of, amazing and wonderful things that are available on the internet. I don't know about you, but I found some pretty wonderful things on the internet, funny things, hilarious things, exciting things, and just with that constant stream of information, just, you know, crackling my neurons or whatever, just kind of like it's a little bit of an information overload. And the thing is technology is what's the word, accelerating faster than the human body can adapt. So the human body isn't used to cell phones. The human body isn't used to like staying up till 3 in the morning and watching vlogs or whatever it is, right? So or another example might be the human body isn't ready for the flicker rate of the phones and the televisions. That's another thing. The screen flickers at a certain rate that keeps you addicted and causes an alpha brainwave state. You can see this. I remember having this state when I was a kid, and I'd be watching TV, and then a commercial would come on, and I'd be like this. I'd be like just zoned out. Like, I'd be thinking like, okay, I gotta walk to the kitchen. Why am I still watching the TV? There's a commercial on. Like, I don't need to watch this. I'm gonna go make a sandwich. But then I see the commercials and I'm like, like I'm zoned out in zombie mode. And human biology hasn't caught up to um, offer some kind of defense mechanisms for this technology. It's being bombarded by, people trying to get you to buy products, people trying to get you to, swindle you in this way or swindle you in that way, or all these propositions and things. And, I'll tell you the story of the Wuggy. There was this Wuggy on, YouTube ads or whatever, and it was a Wuggy. It was a little puppy, and it looked so real. It was like so real, and I seen it. I'm like, how can this be real? This is so cool. I want to get one. It's like a little puppy, but it's a robot. And it ended up being a scam. And like, the puppy wasn't nearly as cool as it was in the commercial. And it was like $30. So maybe some flags would have, started going off in my head. Like, I figured I'd look into it first, but then I found out it was a scam. I'm like, I was tricked, And with, AI becoming more advanced, it'll be harder for us to identify those tricks, right? So there's they can create all kinds of content. They can do all kinds of things, and there's kind of like an anime feel to the AI technology. But yeah, I don't know. This video is about drugs, so maybe I should stay on topic. So yeah, but yeah, with Big Brother's dick so far up your ass that you're shitting rainbows or whatever. It's pretty fucking hard to what's the word? to form deep and meaningful connections, and you're always worried about being persecuted or being attacked or being labeled psychotic or whatever. So yeah, I'm in a legal situation right now where my freedoms are severely limited. I got big brother breathing down my neck, and I got agents watching me. Not like in any malicious sense, but just kind of what's Dustin up to today kind of thing. Like, oh, let's see what Dustin's up to today. And I consider myself kind of a visionary, kind of a intellectual, and I am pretty smart. When I was measured when I was younger, I had an IQ of 120, but I was also told I had Asperger's and all these emotional disorders and stuff, so that limits my effectivity in conveying my message. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I look at the internet and I see, people have already said everything and done everything and, traveled every path. And, there's people a lot smarter than me, even though I'm like above average. There's a lot of people who are more skilled at explaining things than me, more, oratorically skilled or whatever. So I kind of feel like, there's nothing much to add. The internet kind of has it all. And, but yeah, I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. But yeah, so staying away from drugs. It's you don't need drugs to form meaningful connections, but it helps, right? So, but then if you do certain drugs, you'll end up a fentanyl zombie, and you can join the hordes of the clearly unwell individuals that are abusing that stuff, because that's being hunched over for 10 hours a day to get like high for an hour is like does not seem to be a good decision, right? And it's as easy as someone offering you a pill, and you got to be super careful getting out of there. And I even saw this story. It was like a hot shots or something like that. You get a hot shot. Let's say you owe money to a drug dealer, and he's like, "Oh, I got something for you." Oh, you don't have to worry about paying me back. Just try this hot shot, this shot or whatever. It'll get you really high, and then the shot kills you to collect on drug debts. And apparently, there have been like 941 casualties from these hot shots. So not only do the drugs not only do the drugs might kill you, they're also intended to kill you if you piss like certain gangs and other organized crime syndicates off, right? So yeah, the streets are becoming more increasingly dangerous, and yeah, I don't know. It's like letting go of a good friend, but weed, which we once thought was our friend and that was helping us, actually leads to psychosis and actually makes certain people, not all people, but certain people unwell. And I was one of those people. I like to smoke weed, but now I'm, trying to gain some resolve and just stay away from the devil's lettuce. And that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been trying to do. That's how life is now. And now instead of smoking weed all day, every day, 2 weeks out of the month, and staying blasted on amphetamines for the other 2 weeks of the month, I'm sitting down reading a book with my mom, and we're reading The Ranger's Apprentice, which is a very good book. And I could never imagine reading a book or doing normal things when I'm blasted out of my fucking mind on addictive and psychoactive chemicals. So that's the thing. So being sober